Hey folks, it's Endymion for the Dork-at-Arms, etc. I've got a special little review of the... Oh, I'm like a YouTuber now. Like a makeup tutorialist. This is the Meyer Rapier from Purpleheart Armories. You can see there. Gotta be careful about the ceiling. You can see their maker's mark right there for woodenswords.com. I'll put a link in the description below so you can get this weapon if you'd like. Right from the off, I think that this is a good weapon in general. Purpleheart is pretty consistently decent quality, especially for beginners, definitely economical for beginners. I definitely appreciate the, on this piece in particular, the amount of flex. I think I like my weapons a little stiffer. Even though I recognize that that is not always martially accurate, there are, I think Meyer describes slapping someone by sort of flicking a longsword, a fetter, sort of along the flat, as it were. But we're not talking about longswords, we're talking about this rapier here. I think if you are going to go for more of a classical rapier, if you want to experience a side sword where you can do that fingering the ricasso deal that you do in Italian and Spanish stuff, this is not the weapon for you. If you want to go for more Meyer and Morozzo with the early side sword type stuff, this is definitely for you. Sorry, I just had popcorn. I will say, I have only read through Meyer a little bit, and I still haven't gotten my copy of Morozzo, so can take this with a grain of salt. I am curious as to why Meyer in his time, and maybe other Lichtenauer swordsmen for rapiers, would have used a side ring rather than a ring off of the ricasso. Although you can see that this blade has this schilt here, this part right here, very, very similar to the long swords that Meyer uses throughout his manual. So there is that, definitely. I will say that the knuckle bar and the quillons provide pretty decent protection. The side ring is more or less a target to my enemies, especially when they have more hand protection using their rapiers. In terms of weight and heft, I like it a good deal. It feels very, very... it feels a lot better than the shit rapier that I was forced to use before this. And I will say that there are beefier, full-length swept hilt battlefield rapiers with blades that are just as, if not wider than this. It's about a little more than a centimeter, maybe a centimeter and a half, and it tapers down to about this rolled point. Goes down to maybe three quarters of a centimeter. Not a terrible distal taper going down the edge of the blade. It's very, very slight, if even there at all. I will say that using schilt and thumbing the schilt is definitely something that I have to get used to. Meyer depicts the use of this weapon in a hammer fist or like an off hammer fist if you want a little more point control, but I think this is a pretty decent weight. My only points of contention would be this material for the handle, and mostly the material is just like, I'd prefer real leather, just because I don't like pleather ethically, but I also can't tell if this is actual real leather, so take that with a grain of salt. I will say, though, my biggest point is a spherical pommel. Now, the way they've secured this is that this screw here secures into both the pommel itself and to the tang. So the tang actually screws into the pommel, and in turn this screw screws into both the tang and the pommel itself. It's very quite secure. It hasn't really come unscrewed in the middle of sparring. And again, it's if you know how to use this, it's a nimble weapon. It's a good weapon to use. Would I buy it again? Probably, but I would probably I would recommend to someone who is purchasing this that you have a translation, if not multiple translations, of Meyer and Morozzo on hand. And if you do choose to focus more on Morozzo and not use Meyer as a companion piece, go for a cut and thrust that has that fingering on a ricasso, or just that simple fingering that we see in the Bolognese style. You know, the early Rapier, this more side sword type stuff. Yeah, to summarize, good weight, great balance. This is new, relatively speaking, from Purpleheart, so for it being so new, I feel like this is a satisfying piece. The handle is definitely wide enough and big enough for me to use this whilst wearing a glove, including heavy lacrosse gloves, or, you know, wearing my lightsaber glove or my rapier glove, although that got torn open, so I'm not going to reach for that. Stiffness and overall performance, it's good. Any weapon is going to tire you out when you're holding it out like this or what have you, but all things considered, good length, good weight. I appreciate the stiffness. It's just really that pommel. It's just that pommel digging into my wrist that I can't stand half the time. But I do like the way they've secured it. That is quite nice, and I appreciate the Purpleheart. Gives you the option of, you know, customizing if you make the purchase, or in some cases, replacing the blade after the blade is broken, because these things, they're gonna break. That's a reality. So, yeah. So again, this is the Meyer style rapier from Purpleheart Armories, and yeah, I'm Endymion for the Dork-at-Arms, etc. Like if you like, subscribe if you want to see more. Consider becoming a patron on Patreon, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Ciao.